You can't have rent control, but the taxes keep going up. Your electric bill keeps going up. The water bill keeps going up that the city is charging you. So there's certain things that have to work hand in hand. It takes the private and public sector to come together to create affordable housing in these cities, but rent control isn't the way.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny and the founder of Catani Capital Group. For the last 2 years, I've been studying alternative assets and now help solve the problem of creating passive cash flow for creators, influencers, and busy professionals by bringing you 5 episodes a week of easy to understand education in the world of passive investing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny, and I'm joined today by Moses Hall. Moses started his real estate career in 2014 as a licensed realtor. Moses specializes in commercial investment property acquisitions and dispositions. In January 2019, he launched MoHall Commercial Urban Development, where his focus is redevelopment through commercial real estate and investment properties. Through collaborative efforts, his ultimate goal is to revitalize communities and build wealth through real estate in the south side of Chicago. Been highlighted in publications as he's received the prestigious honor of being named Realtor Magazine 30 Under 30 class of 2019. Most recently recognized by the Chicago Association of REALTORS, the Commercial Achievement Award. Moses, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have an outstanding resume there, and I'm excited to get to it. But first, let's go back to the beginning. You started your career in 2014. What led you to real estate? What were you doing before that? And what was kind of that golden moment?
So I don't have the traditional, as you want to call it, path to real estate where, either my parents were in real estate or I went to college for real estate. Actually, I have an unrelated background. I actually have a background in the performing arts. So I actually play piano. So I'm originally from New York City, went to a performing arts high school called LaGuardia High School out there. You have to audition to get in. I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Fame. That's the school that I went to. And from there, I studied jazz performance. And when I graduated, I realized that I did not want to be a struggling musician. You see all those TV shows like VH1 Behind the Music. You see groups like TLC where they've sold millions of records, but they're literally broke and filing bankruptcy. And so in my head, I was like, you know what? I did not want to be a struggling artist. And so I moved to Chicago to attend Columbia College, where I studied music business. And so it was pretty much a business degree with the emphasis on the music industry. And once I graduated, I realized that all creatives need some form of space, whether you're a painter, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a singer, whatever your creative medium is, you need a space to showcase your art. And so a light bulb went off in my head. I directly after college, I opened up in a premier event space in downtown Chicago. So I had this creative artist loft. We had different open mics. We had artist showcases. We had all different types of events held in this space. And it picked up so quickly that I was even recognized. Verizon Wireless was doing a small business feature, and I got picked up there. And so many people were calling and booking that I kind of outgrew the space. And so instead of getting a larger space, I came across an old article online about the building that I was in and how the owners pretty much bought it for pennies on the dollar because the area at that time was not developed yet. It was an up and coming area. They pretty much gutted it and made it to artist loft. So I realized what they were charging me for rent, what they were getting other people for rent, and what their mortgage was. And I said, you know what? I need to get on that side of the investment of commercial real estate. And so that kind of led me, I'm pretty much straight out of college. I didn't have no funds. I couldn't go buy a building immediately. So I thought the best way to transition into commercial real estate is starting off by being a realtor. And I went and got my real estate license and started to learn the business and learn how to do investments.
Wow. That's an awesome story. You're right. That is not the traditional foray into real estate there. But I do love that kind of light bulb moment where you're like, you know what, I'm on the wrong side of
Yeah.
this business, right? I'm the tenant here, and clearly the landlord is cashing in. So, started as a realtor. Did you dabble in and I'm not sure what it's like in Chicago, but is there much of a residential scene there? Or did you go straight to working with investors and on the commercial side?
No, there's very much a residential scene here in Chicago. So I started at more so a residential brokerage, but I was the commercial guy. And I kind of built my business working with, more smaller investors that were doing more smaller multifamily deals. And that's kind of how I built up my repertoire of deals that I've done. And typically they may have started maybe between 3-4 units, kind of what we call nowadays house hacking. And then what they did was, once they kind of got it cash flowing and built equity from there, they were able to scale up. And when they scaled up, that's when I started to be able to get into the bigger deals of doing larger apartment complexes and deals that way.
Okay. Interesting. I love that. So start much like investors do, start small. And then have you started to build up your own portfolio as well, or still on the transaction side?
Well, I'm actually transitioning into doing that personally. I'm on the track of doing some hotel development.
Nice.
And so I've been talking with different hotel brands and meeting with them because the reason I saw opportunity in the hotel space is because I know everyone's rushing to Airbnbs. Airbnbs is like the hot thing. However, like anything, it's kind of oversaturated now. One, and then two, there's a lot of legislation that it makes it difficult for investors to really continue with Airbnb. So the next thing, if you're already kind of doing hospitality, is to transition into the hotel space. I know like cities like Atlanta, they just implement it because they have a housing issue. They implement it where they restrict how many Airbnb units you can have. A lot of condo associations here in Chicago, they say we do not allow Airbnb. So it's become a very restrictive market, partly due to, I feel, and most industries, if you don't have any advocacy part, it's kind of hard to get things done in your favor. So there's really no group on behalf of Airbnb owners. There's groups for hotel owners. And so that's kind of what clicked off. So I've been making that transition. As we know, we're in a very transitional season and climate in real estate. So right now I'm kind of doing my due diligence, but yes, I'm doing that transition to hotel development.
Very cool. Yeah, that is, you made a very good point there. I actually have a fund I did last year with some partners. We invested in a large private short-term rental portfolio. Of course, all the short-term rentals are in states that, are pro short-term rental, but that is one of the biggest conversations that I have with potential investors is around the legislation, cities like Atlanta, Chicago, that are, starting to either limit it, right? So some people, like you mentioned, kind of grandfathered in, potentially, and then anybody new is getting pushed out, and that was a really great point. I didn't even think about that, how there aren't really many advocates for the short-term rental space, or small groups which are kind of getting overridden. And so interesting that you're seeing the potential for hotels. We mentioned in your intro there that you're kind of looking into redevelopment. Are you looking to put these in up and coming places? Is that kind of your goal, or what's kind of your goal there with the hotels?
So the goal with hotels is typically a hotel is the last thing that goes into a neighborhood. You have to already have certain things and pre-courses established before you can put a hotel. So in some of the areas that I do want to develop in, that will be like the last thing that would go there. Some other things that we have to put there before a hotel goes there. But yeah, that will be my end goal. I know here in Chicago, in the Woodline community, that's on the south side of Chicago. That's where the University of Chicago is. That's where the Obama Library is going. That's where we have one of the top hospitals is going. They are doing a lot of development in that area due to that Obama Library. And so you always have to have a catalyst like an Obama library to go into a neighborhood before you can just put a hotel in an area.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, right? You want to make sure you've got an area where people are traveling to and will even need it. Now,
Right.
Chicago got hit pretty hard by COVID, right? Not necessarily by the virus itself, but just the
Right.
bureaucracy there, as we all know,
Right.
is there's been some corruption throughout the years. Needless to say, I've got some friends there. So,
Right.
what's it like now? It sounds like things are starting to recover and trend back upwards. Obviously, the economy as a whole is not necessarily trending upwards, but what does it look like overall?
So I know the downtown market took an incredible hit during COVID. However, we're starting to see a trend that people are moving back down to the city. We're seeing a push now, even if you go on sites like Indeed and LinkedIn, where all the jobs were just remote. Now we're seeing hybrid. So that means people are coming back to the office space. So we're seeing a lot of things transition in Chicago. We're still a strong rental market for investors. We just launched over like an $8 billion renovation for one of our largest airports, O'Hare Airport. So we have the NASCAR racetrack coming to Chicago. So there's a lot of development, a lot of things that are happening in Chicago. Yes, we're in a political transition. Our current mayor, unfortunately, did not, or however you feel, did not make the runoff. We do have two candidates that will be facing the runoff in early April. And so we'll see how that shapes up. But there was a lot of political uncertainty, a lot of business groups left, a lot of people moved out of the city, moved to the suburbs. So yeah, there was a lot of things that unfortunately took place in Chicago, but Chicago is bouncing back. Even under the previous mayor, she did have a lot of real estate initiatives. So the real estate community did kind of back her a little bit because she did give a lot of grants. We even have, she started a office downtown, revitalized LaSalle Street, that's our downtown corridor, and given away pretty much billions of dollars of revitalization grants in the city. So I know the real estate community, we're still kind of backing her, but we're pretty much real estate community is looking for someone a little bit more pro-business in that regard. So to your question, how is Chicago doing since post-COVID? We're definitely recovering. We see condo sales are back up. We see return to the office. We're seeing deals trading in the commercial space in the local city area. We actually see a lot of investments coming from the coastal markets, from the California market, New York market, into the Chicago market. That's because your cash flow, is going to be phenomenal. You'll have someone in California that may have had like a 2-3 unit in Cali and sold it, right? Maybe because it's very restrictive in terms of tenant rights and things like that. And they may invest in the, Chicagoland area with a Dollar General, where it's a, triple net lease, as we call it. So essentially the tenant is paying everything. All you're literally doing is sitting back and collecting rent. So you don't have to deal with evicting tenants. You don't have to deal with this and that. So we see a lot of coastal markets where you're cash flowing, and investors love this market because of that.
Interesting. Okay. That's fascinating to see for sure. And always a good sign, right? That's kind of the big sign of true growth, is really the out-of-state investors. I feel like, I've obviously had a lot of operators, investors on, and, everybody likes to dabble in their backyard, right? Their home market. And we've had some Chicago investors on, but when you start to see that out of state, right? You see like your Texas, right? I mean,
yeah,
so many people investing from out of state there, right? That's a real true sign of
absolutely,
of growth. And, as we mentioned, Chicago did get hurt and is, one of the last few big cities that have really had to recover.
right.
And I think, to your point, investors are recognizing that costs are still relatively low there and they can get a good cost basis. And there's actually some potential. And I've always said this about the Midwest. The Midwest is just a tried and true. It's always steady. you're not going to see your big, huge highs, but it's always going to be that steady gain, that steady cash flow.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like there's a lot of opportunity. Like, I know a lot of investors, if you want to buy the trophy property in, Miami or
everybody wants a home run.
Yeah. But Chicago, the Chicago market is, if you want to make some cash flow, if you want to make some money, it may not be the sexiest property, depending on what areas and product type, but you're going to make some money, whereas the norm and what we call cap rate, it's a standard to measure a return on investment. In California, you may be content with a 3 cap, in Chicago, you may be able to get a 6 cap. So
wow.
So
6 caps. Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's what makes it attractive. So what they'll do is they'll 1031 exchange their asset. And that's for those that are listening, that's just a tax strategy that investors use to defer taxes on their real estate gains. So, that's what we're kind of seeing in the Chicago market. A lot of out-of-state investment is flooding through. We also see that Chicago has a big push for the tech industry. We know Google just bought the Thompson Center. It was like over $100 million deal.
Wow.
We have a big medical community. A lot of students come to complete their doctorate and get their medical license here. So we have an influx of a lot of high earners that are coming here to Chicago. So obviously they tend to not only buy homes, but buy investment properties as well.
That's awesome. I love that. And by the way, you also get to watch the river get dyed green on St. Patrick's Day. So
yes, absolutely.
I was there for St. Patty's Day, COVID. I was there that weekend and left like the day that the city shut down. And of course, now we look 3 years later and that ended up, obviously being what it was. But I love Chicago. I've always been a huge fan. It really is a great city. I think it gets a bad rap because, especially during COVID, it did take a hit. But it is such a great city. It's so much fun. The people there are great. It's very social city. I mean, very social. A lot like New York in that aspect. People walk everywhere. Of course, like every big city, it's got its areas you don't want to go to. But as long as you stay away from those, I've never had any issues there. So,
and I think that's the misconception. Of course, you have a few bad actors. There are certain places in the city, obviously, that are a little bit more, have a little bit more issues than others. But overall, Chicago is still an amazing city. I mean, especially during the summertime. I know you mentioned St. Patty's Day, but I don't know too many major cities that have fireworks twice a week, have free concerts and free festivals and all these different things that brings the community together. It's definitely beautiful during, as we call it, summertime shy. And there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of, if you look at other major cities like in New York or California, you couldn't, most people, if you're trying to start off investing, you couldn't start in those type of cities.
Right.
You would have to start at a city like Chicago to kind of get your feet planted. But there's a lot of opportunities, and unfortunately, Chicago has gotten a bad rap. But if you come and experience for yourself, you can see why so many people are investing in this city.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. That's a good, big starter, big city, I guess. Like you mentioned, where you can still get involved and get some return without having to, New York requires some serious skill to navigate.
Yep.
A lot of red tape. What's Chicago like? Is it more tenant friendly? Does it favor on the side of the tenants, or is it more landlord friendly?
It is on the side of the tenants, but you just have to be educated on how to navigate the space. And I think it's important to have a solid team of advisors, brokers, attorneys, contractors. You need to build a solid team as an investor, especially if you're out of state. Property management is crucial. But as I kind of stated earlier in our conversation, advocacy is big. There's a lot of legislation that comes down the pipeline that I'm personally on the front lines, making sure that our politicians know that this is not a good idea. And there's certain things that sound very good. Like if I was not informed and I just heard certain taglines, I would go for it. But once you start to break down some of these legislations for such things as, and I know it sounds bad to say, rent control does the exact opposite of the intended purpose.
Yep.
And we have to continuously keep telling politicians, I know it sounds good, but if we look at cities like New York and we look at cities like, LA, and they have no affordable housing. And they have rent control. And so we see that these type of things, it just doesn't work. Like you can't have rent control, but the taxes keep going up. Your electric bill keeps going up. The water bill keeps going up that the city is charging you. So there's certain things that have to work hand in hand. It takes the private and public sector to come together to create affordable housing in these cities, but rent control isn't the way. And so fortunately in the city of Chicago, we don't have rent control. But it is a little bit more tenant friendly. You just got to know how to navigate. Now a lot of landlords, they're not taking security deposits. What we're doing is now what we call a move-in fee. So it's a non-refundable fee that you can charge the tenant in lieu of security deposit. Because if you accept a security deposit, there's a way that you have to handle it. And one misstep can cost you 3 times the rent. So
wow.
Easier to just do a move-in fee and you have no legal repercussions. And so because to keep a tenant security deposit, it's not just, you broke something, I'm gonna keep it. No, there's a whole process. So it's just easier to collect a move-in fee and work it that way. And so I think that's important to know how to navigate this space, know how to screen your tenants. It's the biggest thing. Screen your tenants. Have a requirement in place. And when you can screen your tenants, you can prevent a lot of the issues that certain landlords face.
Absolutely. Yeah, you made a lot of really great points there. One being sort of the fascinating, nuance that the cities, have rent control. You mentioned New York, LA, and, are trying to, quote unquote, do this affordable housing thing, yet they're allowing utilities and all of these things to continue to rise. And, I always talk about this, but it's the same, in one breath, these politicians want affordable housing, but in the next breath, they don't want it in their backyard. And it's just this fascinating thing that they're in the way of, what they ultimately are trying to go for. And really, you realize it's just political talk. So that's good that you're advocating for no rent control, because when you talk to economists, it's resounding, no matter which side they're on, bipartisan decision that it just does not work. So, and you mentioned those cities, and then fascinating nuance there with the move-in fee versus a rent deposit. But again, that's why it's important to have someone like yourself who understands, what it's like there for investors. And we were talking offline, you just got back from France.
Yeah.
Are you starting to see international interest in investing there as well?
Yes. So we have a huge Canadian population of investors that are coming here to the States in Chicago. Like you said, Chicago is the 3rd largest metropolitan city here in the U.S. So we have a lot of foreign investment from Canada, China. We also have Mexico that come here to the States, and mainly Chicago, to invest their funds here because they see opportunity here. So instead of me flying to all these different countries, taking meetings and meeting with investors, I can go to one place and have everyone centered there. So yeah, we do have a lot of foreign investment. Like I said, we have one of the largest international airports, O'Hare. We have one of the most extensive railroad systems in terms of imports, exports. We have, it is so many opportunities here. Like I said, we have a big, in terms of schooling, we have a lot of foreign students that come here. Like I said, the tech world is becoming a hub here. So it's pretty much, we are a global city. And so there's a lot of international interest here in the country. So like I said, we're kind of the half point between the East Coast and the West Coast, and literally from here to Paris was only like a 7-hour flight. So, by the time I took an evening flight, and by the time I woke up, I was landing. So it's very easy to get anywhere in the world here in Chicago.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of Chicago, always have been. Great to visit. You've got the railway system too, like internally in the city. I mean, the infrastructure really is super dialed. You can get, nobody has cars. It's like New York. Nobody has cars. Everybody walks or takes a train. And they really have done a good job. And it's good to see that they're finally starting to, put a focus on politics and get some different people in place. So it's been awesome to see for sure, and look forward to keeping up with it. Also a huge finance mecca as well, obviously. So a lot of great opportunity there. So really appreciate all of your insight here, Moses. This has been absolutely incredible. Go ahead and wind down now. We'll jump to the final 5. First question, best advice you've gotten from a mentor?
Don't give up, in any industry, but mainly real estate. You're going to have some good days and you're going to have some really bad days. When you're on, you're on. When you're off, it is way off. And no matter what side of the coin you are on, like you said, whether you're an investor, as I just mentioned, you're going to have some tenants that are going to just, there are going to be some deals, whether you're in the middle of financing something and interest rates jump or this thing happens. Just stay the course. Don't give up. That's one of the best advice that I've gotten being in this industry. That's the only way I've lasted almost 10 years in this industry.
Gosh, I love that. It's so true. So simple, yet so true. And gosh, you made such a great point. It can be so great, but it can also hurt, because in this industry, especially, everything, obviously revolves around money. You start getting into these bigger transactions, and they're millions of dollars, and 1-2% of that, you start putting down some earnest money and some different fees, and all of a sudden, those fees are, tens of thousands of dollars, and you take a loss. Those can really hurt, and I feel like that's a big deterrent for people, especially if your first couple deals go that direction, which is not uncommon. It can be easy to want to give up, but it can be the most rewarding as well, because once you finally get it and get your system, man, it just starts to flow, that golden deal. So I love that. What is it about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
When I can go to different communities and see that it was a dilapidated, vacant building, and then I can drive by a year later and to see individuals or families walk out that same building with their children or grandma or grandpa. And, maybe at the lower level, there's a small business owner that's opened up and that's thriving. That makes me feel good. That's my why. When I can change a community through commercial real estate, something that was a nuisance to the area now becomes a vibrant, building in the community. So that's my why of why I continue to do what I do, when I can change lives through commercial real estate.
Gosh, I love that. That's incredible and so powerful as well. Favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
Oh, that's a good question. So I read a lot of music business books. So I like I said, that's my second life as well. I also have a music publishing company, and so what we do is we make catalog acquisition rights to some of your favorite celebrity artists. So it's like investing in real estate, but I buy the publishing rights to certain artists. So I'm always constantly reading music business books related to the industry. So that's kind of what I read, non-real estate.
That's awesome. I love it. We didn't even get to that, but that's very, very cool. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, if I could read minds,
Nice.
if I could read minds,
That would help a lot for sure.
that would help a lot in life. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. Give you a lot of power negotiating for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Cool. Last one. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
You can follow me on all social media platforms at Moses, Moses, Hall, Hall. So that's on Instagram, that's on Facebook, that's on LinkedIn. You can find me on all those platforms at Moses Hall.
Awesome. We'll link that in the show notes, make it super easy. Moses, thank you again so much for your time. This is absolutely awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you again for tuning in. Who do you know that wants more cash flow? Share this episode with them so you can grow your cash flow together. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed on your platform of choice so you never miss a new episode. Go to CataniCapitalGroup.com to learn more.